There's a famous story about Rabbi Moshe. He's in a fierce debate with 15 other rabbis who tell him he's wrong. They say, Moshe, it's 15-1. You're outnumbered. But the rabbi insists. He says, I'm right. And suddenly the heavens open and a thunderous voice proclaims, Moshe is right. And the clouds close, there's silence, and finally, one of the rabbis shrugs and says, okay, so now it's 15-2. All right. So that's the problem with opinions, right? So everyone is entitled to their own opinion as long as they agree with mine. All right? So in that story, even in the face of divine intervention, when all of the signs point to me being wrong about something, some people are so caught up in it that it's just too late. They're not going to give up. I'm guilty of this too. Sometimes if I sense a disagreement on the horizon, I immediately label whoever I'm disagreeing with as wrong, and maybe I just avoid ever talking to this person, unless I have to, of course. And I'm sure some of you already disagree with me, even though I didn't say anything yet. So, hopefully we'll find some agreement. But how do we live in a conflict? How do we disagree, but still have a discussion? It seems like today, in order to have a conversation with one another, we need to trade notes first. I'll only talk to you if you say first that the hostages need to come back. I'll only talk to you if first you say that the Palestinians are suffering because of fill in the blank. I'll only grace you with my opinions and knowledge if you say that you hate Bibi, all right? Or say that you hate Trump, or voted for this person or that. So many preambles and conditions just to talk to one another. Do you know what I'm saying? We just can't just talk. We have to have, first I want to find out about you and then I can talk. Well, our double Torah portion, Matot-Mase'i, has some thoughts about disagreements. And last week, Rabbi Diane gave a beautiful drash about the daughters of Slofchad, 5 brave women with no brothers who stood up for their rights to inherit the land of their father and were affirmed by God. A moment of moral clarity, a divine yes, as she put it. But this week, that clarity starts to blur. The tribe of Menashe raises a concern. They say, "V'ayu le'echad mibnei shivtei bnei Yisrael lenashim, v'nigre'a nachalatan minachalat avotenu." So they're saying if these women marry outside the tribe, the land will transfer to other tribes. Suddenly, the law shifts after that. The daughters can still inherit, but only if they marry within their tribe. And that's how the book of Numbers ends. I think Julia is going to read that part. Is Julia here? Yeah, you're going to read that exact part, right? Mm-hmm. Tomorrow. Stay tuned for tomorrow. Yeah. So yes, it seems like again there's caveats. So this caveat that ends the book of Numbers, it makes us angry. It makes me angry when I read it, or when I read it, my first reaction is to get angry because our deep Jewish value of civil rights starts stirring. Our hands start to rise up in indignation and we yell. We say, this is wrong. This is unfair. The injustice, right? Can't the Torah get anything right? Shabbat shalom, but just kidding. That's not the ending. Yes, it seems like, again, women are being asked to take one for the team. You thought you had rights? Well, here's a caveat. It's not lost on us that these limits again fall on women, that it's their freedom that gets curtailed for the sake of the group. But let's be with that for a minute as we look at a different aspect of that story. Because the Torah and Judaism in general don't only talk about the rights of the individual, it believes in the rights and importance of the tribe, im ani la'atzmi mi ani, if I'm just for myself, then who am I? The tribes were not accidental to the structure of Israel as a society. And they serve as a blueprint for democracy today, like the United States of America, whose basic political structure is that of a federation. So Israel was a federation of tribes. And philosopher and author Rabbi Jonathan Sacks points out that we live in a world where our identity is shaped not just by laws, but by communities, families, neighborhoods, synagogues, schools. We each have a series of identities, and they make up what is collectively known as civil society. A strong civil society is essential to freedom. But here's the catch. Civil society is messy because your rights and my rights might clash. And the danger of overemphasizing individualism is summed up in the closing line of the book of Judges, where they say, in those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Doing whatever they want sounds like freedom until you realize it led to violence, disunity, and moral collapse. We are living in a moment like that, a moment of competing truths, especially around Israel and Gaza. And every Jewish WhatsApp group I'm in is on fire. I don't know about you, but journalist and podcast host Ezra Klein, who I love to listen to, recently wrote an op-ed called "Why American Jews No Longer Understand One Another," about the collapse of the American Jewish consensus. He speaks of three ideas that used to define that consensus. Here are the three ideas. He talks about that what's good for Israel is good for the Jews. That was one consensus. That anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. And that peace would come through a two-state solution. So one current example of this split within American Judaism happened right here in New York City with the vote for Zoran Mamdani, a progressive politician who says he's uncomfortable supporting a country that gives different rights based on religion. Many American Jews, especially younger ones, hear that and think he's not wrong. After all, the reason Jews have thrived in America is precisely because religion isn't tied to citizenship. Older Jews see Mamdani rise as a threat to Jewish safety, fearing that criticism of Israel is a cover for anti-Semitism, and that without unwavering U.S. support, Israel could cease to exist. Younger Jews, on the other hand, fear that Israel's current path toward occupation and inequality will corrupt Jewish values and fuel more global anti-Semitism. And as Klein puts it, for diaspora Jews, safety comes from diversity. So for diaspora Jews, safety comes from diversity. But for most Israeli Jews, and I speak as one of those until 3 years ago, safety comes only if there is a Jewish majority. To quote journalist and author Douglas Murray, you can always tell someone hasn't thought about the region at all if they think anything about it is simple. So we fall into camps, we feel we have to choose sides, and for decades the two-state solution allowed those ideas to live in parallel. That consensus, that status quo, allowed American Jews and Israeli Jews to keep some things under the table. Let's all conflict avoid this for as long as possible. But with Gaza in ruins, and with civilians starving to death on a daily basis, with the settlements expanding, with the Israeli government further right than ever, that vision feels impossibly far away. And this is exactly why the Torah splits the story of the daughters of Tzlofchad into two, in my opinion. Because in Parashat Pinchas, it's all about individual rights. They stand up and say, we deserve to inherit. And God says, yes. But in Matot-Mase'i, what we're going to read tomorrow, the tribe of Menashe steps in, and now we're talking about collective responsibility. We're saying how to keep tribal land intact. The Torah doesn't cancel their claim, but it sets limits. The tension isn't resolved, but it can be held. As it says, individual dignity matters, and so does the fabric of community. The challenge is how do we hold both of those things without losing the other? And just as we can't have true freedom from Egypt without receiving the Ten Commandments, the laws of civility, the creation of a civilization that can live with one another and live with disagreement. How can we hold these disagreements and yet still talk to one another? How can we hold that tension? Not resolve the tension, but live with it. So rabbis famously said, Elu va'elu. Elu va'elu divrei Elohim chaim. These and those are words of the living God. In other words, a dialectic, as my wife would tell me. Two things can be true. That doesn't mean everyone is right. It means wisdom lives in tension. Truth doesn't always come as a thunderclap from heaven. They don't always open up and say, this person is right. Right? Sometimes it comes from sitting in the gray area, from resisting the pressure to choose simple sides. And I wish that were easy. I wish it were easy to just live in that tension, but it's not. It's not easy. Elu va'elu. I can believe, for instance, that there needs to be a Jewish state in the land of Israel and that religious diversity is essential. I can be pro-Palestinian and not Israeli. I can mourn the lives lost in Gaza and still care about the hostages. I can believe the IDF is the most moral army in the world. I speak as an officer of the IDF from many years ago. And I also believe that Israel must do more to protect Palestinian civilians. I can condemn Hamas and still fight for the future where Palestinians live in safety, dignity, and freedom. I can criticize this government and still love this place and these people. I can be Jewish and hold complexity. And today I ask, maybe we can create a new consensus. Maybe we have to. So linguist, author, and teacher Dr. Jeremy Benstein, who also happens to be our new member engagement manager's father, he wrote a few months ago in the Times of Israel that there's currently a battle for the soul of the country of Israel. He writes, and I quote, "Will we be the oppressive, exclusionary, settler, colonist, ethno-state that many see us as, and some in Israel support as part of their twisted messianic vision? Or will we be an inclusive, liberal democracy that can provide a still much-needed home for Jews and Jewish collective identity, language and culture, but while still honoring and enabling the Palestinian need for exactly the same thing? The attempted judicial overhaul of last year and now October 7th and the subsequent war have shown us how urgent this battle for the soul of the country is, and also that we actually have a chance of winning, since more and more Israelis are fed up with the radical right wing and where it has led us. It's time to rally the Israeli and Palestinian troops and fight the real enemy, peace-hating extremists on both sides. So before you and I and any of us post about Israel or about Gaza, here's what I want to ask you. I want you to take a breath. Let's take a deep breath. And let's ask ourselves, will this bring us closer to peace? Or will it stoke the same fear and fury that has kept this war alive for generations? I want to wish us today, because I know that I needed this Shabbat, because it's been a rough week, and we need to be proud to be Jewish. And for me, it's not easy to see what's going on and still be proud. But those two things can live together. And I'd like to wish us all that may we be able to live with the tension. May we be able to see the dialectic. And may we stay away from absolute certainty. Shabbat Shalom.